My girlfriend told me I was being paranoid about her ex staying over, so I packed a bag and left a note with screenshots that made her cry in front of friends. I'm 31M and my girlfriend is Laura, 29. Her ex is Josh, 30. We've been together 3 years, living together for a year and a half. For most of that time, things were ordinary in the small, steady way relationships get: grocery runs, arguing about whose turn it was to take out the trash, and lazy Sunday shows. I trusted her. I thought we were on the same page. 2 months ago, she asked if her friend, meaning Josh, could crash on our couch for a few nights. He'd been between places, she said, kicked out by a roommate stuck. She framed it as practical. He'd be quiet. He'd keep to himself. She'd make sure it didn't get weird. I said I wasn't thrilled. I told her I didn't want someone with that history sleeping in our living room if we couldn't be sure about boundaries. She rolled her eyes and told me I was being paranoid. We argued a little. She called me dramatic, then she promised rules. No keys, no overnight stays past a set time, no solo hangouts. I let it go because she seemed earnest and because I didn't want to be the couple who fought about every friend. For 2 days, he kept to himself. He slept on the couch, showered it off hours, ate cereal at 2 in the morning, and left the bowl by the coffee table. Little annoyances. Laura kept saying she was handling it. She'd come home and tell me he'd been quiet, that he was grateful. I wanted to trust her, and then the small things stacked up. A jacket I didn't recognize started hanging on her hallway hook. A faint cologne trace showed up on the bathroom counter. A food delivery receipt with his name on, it was in the trash. He started showing up just to drop something off and then stayed an hour. She laughed softly at messages when I walked past and turned the screen away. None of it was a single, fiery betrayal, but it felt like erosion. Every time I said something, she'd call me paranoid and explain it away. The phrase, "you're being paranoid," flipped a switch in me. It became the wall she put up whenever I pointed out a boundary breach. I don't like snooping. We keep our shared calendar and certain family logistics accessible to each other precisely because we agreed on transparency. One late night, while I was up and checking the calendar for a shift change, a message preview popped up I hadn't expected. It was from Josh. The preview read, "Miss you already. When can I see you alone?" That was not the language of a concerned friend. I didn't react then. I slept on it. The next morning, I asked about keys, about the cologne, about the delivery. She smiled and said I was making a thing out of nothing. She told friends a version that painted me as the jealous boyfriend who didn't get it. The more I pushed, the more she doubled down on the "I'm just helping a person in need" story. That was the part that hurt. Not only was I being dismissed, but the dismissal was rehearsed and offered to anyone who asked. 2 nights later, I came home early from work. I walked into the living room and found Josh on the couch looking up at Laura while she spoke. And his expression wasn't the gratitude of someone crashing temporarily. It was the easy, expectant look of someone used to being noticed first. The look landed weirdly in me, like wait. I went upstairs and sat on the bed for a long time. I packed a bag. I didn't want theatrics. I wanted to make the truth undeniable if she ever tried to rewrite it. I took photos of his jacket on our hook, the delivery receipt from our trash can, a screenshot of the calendar preview I'd seen. I printed them, wrote down dates and times, and copied short message snippets exactly as they appeared. I wrote a single-page note. I said what I'd seen, the dates, that I was leaving to give myself space, and to let her think about whether the situation fit the life we promised. I left the bag by the door and the printed stack on the kitchen island face up, so there was no pretending later that nothing had happened. I didn't post anything online. I didn't call friends to stage anything. I walked to my sister's that night and slept on her couch. The following afternoon, when I came by to pick up a few things, I watched from the stair landing while she read the note. She didn't scream. She didn't immediately beg. She sat on the kitchen floor and covered her face and then called a couple of friends. The thing people ask about is what happened next. She read the note aloud to them, and she cried in front of them. She alternated between raw apology and blaming me for invasion. I watched as the conversation split into versions in a small cluster in our kitchen. She admitted later, in fragments, there had been late messages, a night she'd lingered and exchanged something stupid, a kiss she called a mistake the next morning. She said she'd been lonely and had let attention feel like validation. Seeing her say what she had tried to hide mattered. It made the situation real in front of people who knew her. One friend, Mia, who'd been close to Laura since college, didn't let the moment dissolve into neat platitudes. She asked direct questions. Did you ever go beyond a kiss? Who invited him in? Why didn't you tell me he was staying? Those quiet, pointed questions forced answers. Laura stumbled, and then when the small admissions came, the mood in the apartment changed. Some of our mutual friends were stunned. A few stayed with her on the couch and comforted her. Others looked at me differently, some sympathetic, some wary. It was messy and painfully human. Update 2 days later. The immediate fallout was a mix of apologies, silence, and awkward messages. Laura deleted Josh from her phone and blocked him. She texted me a couple of times begging me to come home and talk. I returned one afternoon to pick up a few things and ended up staying to talk on the couch for hours. She apologized again and said she hadn't meant for things to get as far as they did. She said shame had made her lie instead of tell me. She asked for counseling. I told her I needed time and then agreed to consider it. Her friends split. Some privately told me they were glad I'd shown the evidence. Others avoided me for a few days. Our mutual friend Sam messaged me to say he was on my side and would support whatever I needed. That meant more than people realize. Small, human messages like that matter when everything else feels loud. We started counseling a couple weeks after the note. The therapist made us slow down, separate facts from feelings, and not fall into the blame spiral. Laura spoke about loneliness and how familiar attention from an old lover felt like easy comfort. She admitted the kiss and the late messages and said she regretted them. I talked about how being dismissed as paranoid wore me down. The therapist gave us practical steps, weekly check-ins, a rule that overnight guests require both partners' consent, and a transparency step, show communications about exes if one partner asks. The sessions helped at first. Laura made practical changes. She stopped seeing friends who were close to Josh. She blocked him across platforms. She answered messages faster and didn't use the "you're paranoid" retort as a first offense. She made small efforts to prove reliability, showing up when she said she would, being present for boring logistics. On paper, it looked like forward motion, but progress was messy. Once she forgot to tell me Josh had texted, and I found out secondhand. It felt like a bruise reopening. We argued about privacy. She said checking the calendar made her feel invaded. I said feeling dismissed pushed me to check. We argued about the shape of apologies. Those nights, I would stay at my sister's because being in the house where things had happened was sharp and hard. Update 10 days later. After a week and a half of therapy and small efforts, we had a day that felt like a step. Laura planned a quiet anniversary, reservations, a simple meal, and a real effort on her part. She handled it without fanfare. The night wasn't a sweeping repair. It was a small, ordinary readjustment. We did the dishes together afterward and didn't talk about the incident until later. When we did, the conversation was practical. What do we do next week that keeps us connected? I liked the ordinariness of the question. It felt like a stabilizing anchor. On the social side, the ripples continued. A few people who had reflexively defended her earlier were quieter in group chats after Mia had shown screenshots to some mutual friends. People don't like having their comfortable stories disturbed. Some retreat when reality contradicts the narrative. A couple of mutual friends unfollowed us for a while. That stung, but the main thing I watched for was whether Laura would keep choosing me in the small ways. For the most part, she did. There were tests. Once I found a text she'd saved in drafts addressed to Josh, a half-typed note that never sent, but was written in a way that made me feel small again. It was a lapse, and we had to undo it with a raw talk late into the night. She cried and said she'd been stupid and ashamed. I told her that shame alone doesn't fix things. You have to pick the better thing the next day. She promised she would, and then she did the next day by showing up where she said she would and not walking away from uncomfortable conversations. Those small acts mattered more than drama. Trust, it turned out, rebuilds with 1,000 tiny errands of reliability rather than any single big speech. Final update, 4 months later. 4 months out from the night, I left a note. We are not the same couple we were, and whatever we have now is quieter and more careful. We went to counseling off and on for about 3 months and then scaled back to check-ins. Laura kept her promises in the ways that count. She blocked and cut contact with people who could destabilize us. She stopped going to events where Josh's circle overlapped. She texted me proactively if plans changed. I stopped waking up in the middle of the night and rifling through shared calendars. We replaced the late-night suspicious scrolling with a rule. If something bugs you, say in the morning and we talk it through. There were costs. A few friends dropped away. A couple of family invites were awkward for a while. Some people still look at us with that slow curiosity friends reserve for bruised couples. That stings. But what mattered more was that Laura faced what she'd done in front of people who mattered. And then she didn't hide behind, I was helping a friend when it fit her story better. She said the hard things in front of people who knew her. She did the quiet work that followed. We don't have fireworks or a cinematic reconciliation. We have dinner plans that get honored, small check-ins that actually happen, and therapy tools we use without rolling our eyes. We both learned the difference between protecting someone's dignity and protecting a story that lets you avoid responsibility. Leaving with a bag and screenshots was dramatic and painful. I accept that. It forced the truth into daylight. What followed was the slow, unglamorous work of being present and rebuilding trust on ordinary days. The dentist visits kept together, the text replies that don't feel like excuses, the canceled plans that are actually canceled and not left as half-lies. I don't want this to sound like a triumphalist ending. It's not. It's an honest account. A misstep exposed, messy consequences, and then two people who decided the relationship mattered enough to try and do the work. Some days are better than others. We both still have to choose the better thing day after day.